The first scream didn't come from the nurse, it came from the room itself, from the air that seemed to shatter when the CEO's voice cut through the hospital corridor like a blade. "Smash her face," he barked, loud enough for patients behind thin curtains to hear, loud enough to make monitors beep faster and a child begin to cry. In that instant, the hallway froze. Nurses stopped walking, a janitor's mop slid from his hands, and the young nurse at the center of it all felt the world narrow to the sound of her own breathing. Her name was Emily Carter. She was 26, 5 months into her first full-time job after nursing school, and she still tied her hair the way her mother had taught her, tight and neat, as if order could protect her from chaos. Emily had been raised to believe hospitals were sacred places. Her father had died in one, and yet she still chose to work here, believing care could be louder than cruelty. She never imagined that danger wouldn't come from a disease or an accident, but from a man in a tailored suit with a gold badge and unchecked power. It had started with a mistake that wasn't really a mistake. Emily had refused to discharge an elderly patient whose blood pressure kept crashing. The CEO, Richard Hale, was touring the floor with donors that day, smiling for photos, promising efficiency and excellence. A delayed discharge meant a delayed bed, and a delayed bed meant a dent in his perfect numbers. When Emily calmly explained her concern, he smiled first. Then his smile vanished. He accused her of insubordination, of embarrassment, of forgetting her place. When she stood her ground, he snapped. Security guards hesitated. They knew Richard Hale. They also knew Emily. She worked double shifts, stayed late, prayed with families when doctors were too busy. The guards looked at each other, trapped between orders and conscience. Emily felt her knees shake, but she didn't step back. She thought of her mother, who worked 3 jobs to get her through school. She thought of her patient, pale and trembling behind her. She lifted her chin. "I won't apologize for protecting my patient," she said, her voice quiet but steady. That was when the CEO lost control. He stepped closer, his face red, his finger inches from hers. "You think you're a hero?" he snarled. "You're nothing. Smash her face and remove her." Time slowed, stretching the moment thin. Emily braced herself. She knew the guards wouldn't enjoy it, but orders were orders. She closed her eyes, whispering a prayer she hadn't said since childhood. Heavy footsteps echoed from the far end of the corridor. 3 men walked in wearing civilian clothes, but there was something unmistakable about them. The way they moved, the way they scanned the room without turning their heads, the way their presence alone seemed to push the walls back. One was tall with cropped hair and calm eyes. Another had a scar near his jaw. The third carried himself like he was still wearing a uniform no one else could see. They stopped. "What's going on here?" the tall one asked, his voice even, controlled, but carrying weight. Richard Hale turned, irritation flashing before recognition hit him like a punch. His face drained of color. He knew those men. Everyone at the hospital knew them. They were Marines, active duty, brothers in arms visiting their sister, a fellow Marine, who was recovering upstairs after surgery. Emily didn't know this yet. She only saw the way the CEO's confidence cracked. "Nothing that concerns you," Hale snapped weakly. The Marine with the scar took a step forward. "It concerns us when we hear threats. Especially against medical staff." Emily opened her eyes. For the first time since the shouting began, she felt something other than fear. She felt seen. Hale tried to laugh. "This nurse is refusing orders. She's disruptive." The tallest Marine looked at Emily. "Did you do anything violent?" "No," she said softly. "Did you endanger anyone?" "I did the opposite." Silence followed. The Marines exchanged a glance that said more than words ever could. The third Marine spoke then, his voice low and dangerous. "My sister is alive because nurses like her don't follow bad orders." Richard Hale backed up a step. "This is my hospital. And that's her patient," the tall Marine replied. "And this is a public building with cameras." Someone had started recording. A phone was raised. Then another. The guards stepped back, relief visible on their faces. The CEO's power, so absolute moments ago, began to crumble. He adjusted his tie, tried to regain control. "You're overreacting." I was angry. It was a figure of speech. The scarred Marine didn't smile. Ordering violence isn't a figure of speech. Hospital administration arrived minutes later, summoned by whispers spreading faster than any code blue. The corridor filled with suits and stethoscopes. Emily was escorted to a chair, hands shaking, heart pounding. One of the Marines handed her a bottle of water. "You did the right thing," he said simply. Emily cried then, not loud, not dramatically, but the kind of cry that comes when fear finally loosens its grip. She cried for the patient who might have been harmed. For herself. For every nurse who'd ever been told to stay quiet. An internal investigation was launched that same day. Security footage didn't lie. Witnesses spoke up. People who had been silent for years. Nurses shared stories of intimidation. Doctors admitted pressure. The hospital board suspended Richard Hale pending review. Emily was terrified she would be fired anyway. She spent nights staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment over and over, wondering if bravery was worth the cost. Her mother held her hand and reminded her that courage often feels like regret before it feels like pride. 2 weeks later, Emily was called into a meeting. Her stomach twisted as she walked into the boardroom. Instead of termination papers, she found apologies. The CEO had been removed. Policies were changing. A new patient advocacy council was being formed, and they wanted her on it. Emily didn't smile right away. Healing takes time, but she accepted. On her way out, she passed 3 familiar figures near the elevator. The Marines. They nodded at her, quiet and respectful. "Thank you," she said. The tall one shook his head. "You didn't need us. You already stood up." That night, Emily returned to her shift. She checked vitals. She held hands. She did what nurses do, steady the world when it's breaking. The hospital felt different, safer, not because of uniforms or authority, but because someone had said no when it mattered. And somewhere in that long, echoing corridor, a lesson lingered like a heartbeat: power doesn't make you strong, character does. And sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do is refuse to look away, even when fear is screaming louder than hope.